Okay, welcome to Wednesday. We'll be working on our BuzzFeed learning activity thing today. A couple announcements, both related to research opportunities here. The first one is Innovation Scholars. This is a program where we select 4 students to be on a team to do a research project between now and end of February. Uh, and we're actually working for an organization, a healthcare organization in the Twin Cities, to do a problem for them. There'll be there'll be 4 students and a couple faculty mentors. I'll be one of the faculty mentors for this. Junior, possibly sophomore or senior students can submit applications for that here. So there's some options here. There's I guess we're limiting it to juniors and seniors. So if you have enough credits to be a junior, you can submit to that now. The other thing is McNair. McNair is a summer research project that you work on over the summer. And you had a mentor in computing. This past summer I mentored 2 students who were working on robotics and getting Alexa to talk to a robot sort of stuff. There are some requirements with McNair also. Generally it's sophomores or juniors. You have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and then you have to follow one of the criteria, the first-generation college students, or identify as an underrepresented group. There's a number of them listed there, or qualify for certain financial aid or Pell Grant options for that. So depending on where you fall, there's a tool you can click on, fill out a couple questions and see if you're eligible. And if so, you can fill out an application. Both of these come with stipends to help you pay some for your student research, because you'll be probably giving up some time on another job to do this. So you get paid to do both of these summer research projects. So I'll probably be mentoring both of them partially. So if you're interested in either one, consider that. Let's look at this week's Unit 4 learning activity or discussion area here. You're going to make a BuzzFeed quiz. So BuzzFeed, I linked in one of these to actual BuzzFeed site. BuzzFeed now has been taken over by ads and this sort of stuff. So it's all ads and stuff like that. So can't hardly find the quiz here for this. But the idea is you'd take this quiz, they'd ask you some strange questions and they'd predict which character you are in some show for that. BuzzFeed quiz has a really cool history with the student who actually started this whole thing. So I quote the Wikipedia stuff because I just find that fascinating, but you don't have to worry about that. You just have to come up with your own BuzzFeed quiz here. So what I would suggest you do to start with is just start a little brainstorming setup there. What's your quiz topic here? Are you gonna predict what Harry Potter house you're in? The classics are that. But you can predict anything. Last class we had people predicting what soccer match or position that you should be in, or what noodle, if you were a pasta noodle, what noodle would you be there? So you can do anything, any character or whatever. Generally, you should be printing out maybe 3 or 4 different options here. So about this time of day, I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm getting hungry. So I'm thinking cookies, and I like to make cookies there. So I was thinking I would do, what type of cookie do you like here? And I list my 3 options here. So again, your job here is to brainstorm what are you going to try to predict here? What are the options? You should have 3 or 4 options here. And then what questions are you going to ask the person here. And you can try to do this logically, but I think that's really boring. I think this should be really creative and made up there. I mean, you have full creative license here to ask anything here. So, you know, um, I don't want to ask them if they're vegan or vegetarian, and if so, tell them they should eat vegan ginger snaps there. That, I mean, I could do that. That makes sense, but that'd be boring. So I'm going to ask them things like maybe what car they drive or what type of personality they are or something like that. And based on that stuff, I'll make up some sort of rationale to tell them what cookie they are for this. So that's your job. So just start brainstorming some ideas. What do you want to do? You might want to look at some of these options, talk to some friends, try to figure out what you want to do as far as this. So do some brainstorming first and then start coding that in here. Your code, then once you kind of decide that, you should be doing things like, writing, this program will predict what cookie you like. You consider yourself fun, boring, or quirky, and I'd read that in. And I maybe ask, how old are you? And read that in. So see if you can start printing off different options here. Okay, let's see how that goes. So we're going to just talk about a couple common errors or things to watch for here. One of the things is you'll be getting some input here and storing that in some variables here, and then doing some if-then checks. Remember that we talked about strings. A lot of you will probably doing inputs as strings. Like here, I want them to say they're fun or boring or quirky. Read that into a string here. And then I'm going to check if their personality is fun here. But again, I don't want to do an equals comparison with strings. Remember, it'll warn me about this. I want to do like personality dot equals, or there's also this dot equals ignore case, and that actually might be better for this because I don't care how they enter it, uppercase or lowercase. So I'm going to do that. So if the personality dot equals ignore case equals fun, and again, I would start really simple with this and then add some more complexity here. So do some things where you can test this out and do it. And run this. Do some basic input, print out, see if you're reading it in correctly, because you're going to run into some errors, especially when you're inputting both strings and numbers. So I'll show you a common error we get here. If I run this, it says, oops, I have to fix an error. Oops, yeah, sorry, I have some of this stuff. Oops, I need to just comment that out. Okay, let's see if that'll work now. Okay, it says what personality? So I'm boring. How old am I? I'm old. And it should ask me, what car are you driving? It says what type of car are you driving, but it doesn't let me input that here. It asks it, and I have a read line here. And so actually printing that out, it read in my personality is boring, my age is old, and my car is blank. And why is that car blank there? So what happens when you're reading in numbers and strings is a weird thing here. I'm typing in boring, I'm typing in an age, and I'm typing in a car. What I don't see is some of the hidden or invisible characters here. If I turn on the non-printing characters, I see these line feeds here. And so when you do read line, it reads until it gets to the line feed and reads that line feed in. And so it reads in boring. But when I do a read int here, next int, it's going to read just the numbers and stop when it gets to a non-number. And it hasn't read that line feed yet. That line feed is still there. And so now when it reads the car, it looks like I just didn't enter a car, I just entered a line feed. It'll read in that line feed here. So that line feed at the end of this number causes trouble. So in order to get around that, when we read in a number and then later on we want to read in a string, we have to read in that line feed. So we just do an extra input dot next line here, and we just, so that just reads in. So ignore or read in the end of line here. So again, if you program too much complexity, you might not see this. So again, you want to read something in, print it out, see if it's working, add some more, keep testing it out as you go. Don't do a whole big complicated thing and then try to test it out. Do a little bit at a time, test it out, do a little bit more, test it out, and see how it works. Okay? So see how that goes. Let's talk a little bit about how to manage input and how to kind of rein in the number of possibilities there. So again, I'm asking, do you consider yourself fun, boring, or quirky? And again, that's one way to do it, is to list some options and then assume they're just going to enter one of those options. And then I'm just going down here. If their personality is equal to fun, I'm going to say chocolate chip. Boring, I'm going to say raisin, and otherwise vegan. And again, so if they type in fun or boring, it said if they type in anything else, it's going to give them this option. But again, this is just one of my characteristics. I'm not taking account age there. So I want to maybe do more complicated options here. So now I'm start working on some ideas here. So if they're fun, but they're young and they drive a Prius, chocolate chip cookie. If they're fun and they're old and they're Prius, chocolate chip cookie. And I can have a whole bunch of, and again, I can kind of decide, which move some of these things around here. So we would suggest different things in different locations here. How many I just have them enter their car here, enter their car. There's hundreds of cars, so I don't want to be able to check. I mean, already I'm getting all these if-thens, that's too many. So rather than just say, like, what car do you want to drive, I might want to do a thing where I put in the options here. So let's see if I have that here. So here, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to ask them a multiple choice question and limit their choices here. So rather than saying just any sort of car, I'm going to say, what car do you want to drive? A, Toyota Sienna, B, Toyota Prius, C, Toyota Corolla. So they only choose Toyotas apparently. I must have Toyota as a sponsor maybe for mine. There'll be a big Toyota ad in the corner of my website here, I guess. And then I'm just going to read in that car letter here. So again, using multiple choice forces them, just list out that's another way of doing it. Now, again, still, even with that, I have all these complicated if-thens here. Rather than doing it this way, another way of doing it is to try to do some scale here and add things. See if this makes sense. I want to recommend, I'm going to have something called the quirkiness scale, and they're going to start at 0, and based on their answers, they're going to add things to this value. So if they say fun, that's kind of quirky. They get +1 on quirkiness. If they say boring, that's a -1 on quirkiness. If they say quirky, that's a +5 on quirkiness. They say young, they get more on quirkiness. If they're old, they lose some on quirkiness. They're middle, they don't change. Sienna, Prius is a +2. A Corolla is a -2 on quirkiness. So I kind of build this all up and add to this quirkiness here. And again, I was just talking to someone, you can also do some random stuff. you can also just say, so it's different each time, add a random int between 1 and 5 to the quirkiness as an option. So now, and once you have that and, do this, add these things, you'll need some if-then statements to do that. So if the personality is fun, we just say quirkiness equals quirkiness plus 1. If the personality is boring, we say quirkiness equals quirkiness minus 1. So you do that, and then you can do it for the other things, and then you can just, based on what their total quirkiness at the end, I can do their personality. So maybe if their quirkiness is below 4 or something, I'd give them a boring cookie like oatmeal raisin. Otherwise, if it's below 6, maybe I'd give them a chocolate chip cookie. And if they're really quirky, they get the vegan ginger snaps here. So again, those are just some ideas. Your goal is to kind of manage this. And again, also remember, you don't have to do everything. So if you're trying to do Hogwarts houses and there are 4 Hogwarts houses and that seems too many, just don't put anyone in Slytherin. No one wants to go to Slytherin. Or just why don't just put everyone in Slytherin, or a bunch of people in Slytherin. So you can simplify things. You don't have to, this is just for fun and learning. If you are working on characters in your anime sequence series and there's 47 of them, maybe you want to cut it down to 3 or 4. Or maybe 3, so something like that. So yes, you don't have to do all the characters or everything. This is just a fun activity. Okay. Remember, you're supposed to be posting this to your discussion area here. In your discussion area, you want to post your code. So you want to take your code, post it there. And then by Sunday night, post your code. And then sometime by Monday night, try out some people's code and run it and see what you do. So you have to post your code and then do 2 follow-up posts where you run other people's code or use AI to comment on their code. Okay, so that's all in your discussions.